crashes, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts with host David Lamb and the attorneys of Hollis, Wright.
Good evening and welcome into the attorneys. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. A fascinating topic of conversation. Criminal defense and criminal law is what we're going to be talking about. So a lot of ground to cover and some really interesting insights from our panel of guests here. Before we get to that, a quick kind of some ground rules of what you need to know. All throughout the program, there are ways you can join our conversation. That's going to be scrolling at the bottom of your screen throughout the night. Also, you can call and text if you want to text us, that number, 205-670-1949, or the year Josh Wright was born. Or you can get in touch with us toll free. It's 844-529-8255, 844-LAW TALK, and attorneys from Hollis Wright are standing by all throughout the night to take your call as well. You look really good, 1949.
Well, yeah, there's no question. I look really good for that. I age well, Dave.
You do, there's no doubt.
I hope you're doing well.
I am.
Another good week?
Another good week.
Good. Well, you know, Dave, we've done this show for a long period of time. We've done close to 300 shows and been super impressed to work with you.
Well, you as well.
And thank you for crediting me for how good I look with my age now. You know, Dave, we're going to be talking today about criminal law, and Josh Jones is with us today to talk about it. He's got a practice down in Vestavia, and he's been on the show before. And we do this topic not as much as we probably should, and we're going to be talking about not only the differences between the criminal side and the civil side and how those two things intertwine with one another, but what to do if you found yourself in a circumstance where you or a loved one or a friend have a criminal-related issue, and how to protect yourself, why it's important to get a lawyer quickly, those types of things. We're going to be talking through it. So it's an important topic, and the amount of criminal cases that come out of the city of Birmingham, I know it keeps Josh very busy. So first of all, thanks for being on, during your busy schedule, to be able to talk about this stuff.
Thank you for having me on.
Tell us just a little bit about your practice, because I know you do some other stuff in addition to criminal law, but how did you kind of build a specialty in this area?
Sure. Well, I'm a former prosecutor. I spent 5 years at the district attorney's office in Montgomery, so I've seen everything from minor traffic tickets up to capital murder cases. Started my own practice in 2011 after getting a lot of experience doing that. I handle majority criminal defense, but also some family law matters, domestic relations, divorce, and child custody stuff.
What do you see in the criminal context? I always like to ask this question of lawyers. What do you see the most in your practice in the criminal side? Is it domestic related issues that become criminal? Is it car related issues? I mean, what do you see most?
Well, I mean, the vast majority of it would be minor offenses, traffic tickets, drug possession, types of those matters. Very rarely are the most serious crimes the most voluminous. They're more rare. But I handle everything, anything from traffic tickets all the way up to murder cases, like I said, rapes, robberies, drug possession, drug trafficking, pretty much anything. But the majority of cases are minor.
Now, a lot of people do not understand the criminal procedure, and the criminal procedure is a uniquity, if you will, in and of itself. Why is it important to get a lawyer quickly if you have a potential criminal-related issue you're dealing with?
Sure. Well, the one major factor or major thing about getting an attorney quickly is that you can choose your own attorney. You can get in there and start talking about your case very quickly to someone that's knowledgeable and understanding, rather than waiting on your first court date or waiting to be appointed an attorney by a judge. At that point, you don't get to choose who you get or who you want as an attorney. And also, the law enforcement community is very good at what they do, so of course they're going to already start investigating their case. So you want to make sure that you have adequate defense and putting up a defense, because you know they're investigating your case just as strongly as you want to defend your case. And
I know that there are going to be people that are going through this circumstance now that are watching this show or viewing it, after it airs, and saying to themselves, I'm not sure I can afford a guy like Josh Jones. How do you address that? Because I know a lot of times there's probably some creativity to the process that you use, but how do you address that? I mean, it sounds to me like you almost can't afford not to have a lawyer when you find yourself in most of these circumstances.
Correct. It can be difficult, and legal representation is expensive. It's not cheap, but it's very important to have. Sometimes the majority of the time, it's the one shot that they've got. You definitely don't want to be on the back end wishing you had hired someone after it's already too late, because there's very rarely are there second bites at the apple. But with my firm, I'm reasonable. I know money doesn't grow on trees. I can put people on payment plans if necessary, because a lot of these criminal cases are not resolved in a month or 2 months. They drag out for 6 months to a year, and people have time to pay off those legal fees.
Yeah, it's like I mentioned, I really think it's almost worth it to make sure that you find a way to facilitate getting a good lawyer like Josh, because if you don't, you're going to regret it down the road.
Yeah, I'm certain. We've got some questions, and this subject matter is always kind of interesting to me, because you see it on the news all the time, these kind of cases, and so many of the TV shows are that. But I think there are some things that we hear all the time. We don't really know exactly what the heck they're talking about. A question here about the word discovery. You hear that all the time, but in a criminal case, what does that mean?
Sure. Well, a lot of prosecuting bodies, the district attorney's office or municipal courts, they will have what's called an open file policy to give you pretty much anything that they've got on a defendant as far as a criminal charge goes. But discovery is really anything related to the charge. It could be anything from a police report to a dash cam video, a body cam video, and even possibly including more complicated matters like DNA evidence, fingerprint evidence. It runs a gamut of list of things that it could be, and any of those could be included as discovery. It's something that you want to turn over that the defense attorney will have a chance to review and come up with a defense.
And I think people have misconception that it's required that they turn that information over, is it not?
Well, it's really anything that's exculpatory,
Okay.
anything that tends to prove that the defendant did not do it. But generally, the way the law is now, they've leaned more towards an open file policy of just giving the defense attorney or giving the defendant everything they have.
Okay, so the difference in that is that every legal TV show I watch, there's always that big reveal, that shocking secret. So you're saying that does not that is not reality?
They don't know. Correct. It's not nearly as exciting in real life. It's really just a CD or a packet of information that you review or you pick up from the district attorney's office or the prosecuting body, whoever that is, and have a chance to review that with your client to see kind of what the evidence against them is.
Well, and this goes back to this concept of, in all the television stuff we see in Law and Order and all these other TV shows, there's always that aha moment of that lawyer outduped the other lawyer. Right. He's a better lawyer than the reality is. In today's litigation world, whether it's in the criminal or the civil context, good lawyers are thorough enough that really doesn't happen a whole lot. So this is a good example of you're marshaling together the information necessary to make sure that you can put your defense on in the criminal context. And in the civil context, you're marshaling together the evidence that you've got to be able to present your claim, and you're learning what the other side has to make sure there isn't that aha moment. Right. But when we come back, because I know we're getting ready to go to break, I want to talk a little bit about what to expect if you have been arrested and you're being criminally charged with something, either in a misdemeanor or even in a felony context. What's kind of the process? Because I don't think that is something that the layperson understands, but Josh is going to be able to kind of lead, guide, and direct us through it.
All right, let's step aside. Our first break of the evening. Stay tuned. More of the attorneys coming right up.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis, Wright, a personal injury law firm, and thank you for watching The Attorneys. We hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple: to provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free and off air. So if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury topics, call, email, or text us. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, or go to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us button. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and watching The Attorneys. Hollis Wright, car and truck accident attorney, standing by right now to help you.
If you need help after an accident, contact the team of attorneys at Hollis Wright. Our law firm proudly supports Alabama high school athletics as well as the AL.com Hollis Wright Player of the Week.
Be sure to vote every week in the AL.com Hollis Wright Player of the Week fan poll.
Be sure to go vote this week for your favorite player.
Welcome back into the attorneys. Before we return to our conversation, just a reminder, attorneys from Hollis Wright are standing by live. That free, confidential, and off-air conversation is yours. Just pick up the phone and give them a call. Josh?
And call, text, or email. You're going to get a response. You're going to get a response that night. So that's an important way for us to give back to the community.
Absolutely.
It's something we believe in. All right, hey, Josh, talk to me about this. So someone has been arrested, and the criminal procedure process starts. What can they generally expect? I know it's a little unique in each case, but what generally can they expect in the process itself?
Sure. Well, and like you said, it depends on the situation. You have municipal courts, you have state courts, and you have federal courts. They're all a little different. But generally, a person's going to be given a bond of some amount, unless it's an extreme circumstance in which they're given a no bond, but that's very rare. At that point, if they have the ability to bond out, they'll bond out if they can. If they can't, they'll have to wait to their first appearance in front of a judge in order to be advised of their charges and given a new court date. At that point, they're usually either appointed an attorney or advised to hire an attorney. And at that point, that's when discovery kind of comes into play. We receive packets from the district attorney's office or the prosecuting body, look over the defense, the evidence, and come up with a defense, and then either set that for a pretrial hearing or set that for a trial. If it looks like there's something we can't negotiate or can't work out, if the defendant is looking at life in prison and has no reason to plea out, he might just want to take a chance with trial. And so at that point, we'll start negotiating whether this is something we can come to a resolution on, or whether we have to just basically set this up for a trial.
How do you, I know you get this question sometimes, I get it on the civil side, and it's different for you, but how do you handle the person that says, how are you able as a lawyer to represent somebody to the extent that maybe you have some level of knowledge they've committed a crime? How do you justify that with your responsibilities as a lawyer? Because
Sure.
I get questions like that on the civil side. I love to hear stuff like that from guys like you.
Yeah, I do get those questions, especially from friends or family.
Yeah,
but they have a constitutional right to an attorney. Of course, there's a long history of why we have a constitutional right to an attorney in this country. It's very important. Every state and the federal government in this country think that's very, very important. But you have to do your job. It's not necessarily an attorney's job to judge someone based on the evidence. If they say that they are not guilty and want to have a trial, then you weren't there. Then you have to believe them and say that they were not guilty and that they want a trial.
Well, one of the things I think is neat too from the criminal side for guys like Josh that do this type of work is that our country has constitutional liberties and rights and due process to protect those types of individuals, even that have been engaged in wrongful conduct. And we protect those folks no different than protect the people that weren't in those circumstances. And that to me is something unique about our country and our Constitution and our rights, that we're willing to even protect someone from a legal perspective that has committed a wrong to make sure that they are afforded every opportunity to try and have a fair legal process. So I've always thought that's interesting, and I think that's kind of what Josh is alluding to at the end of the day, and it's an important component to our system. It's why we have criminal lawyers that do their job.
And let me say this, and also if the evidence is overwhelming, I often advise my clients it's in their best interest to make a plea, because of course if the evidence is overwhelming, the prosecution side, they have great attorneys as well, and so they will probably prove their case, and at that point they're looking at a higher sentence or a more stiff sentence if they get convicted at a trial rather than trying to plead something out. So I advise my clients, if the evidence is overwhelming, that we need to take a plea deal.
A lot of what you do, negotiating?
Correct.
You're negotiating with DAs
90%.
and municipal prosecutors and whatnot? Yeah,
90%. Very, very rarely do we have trials. They do come up. I was in a jury trial 3 weeks ago, but the majority of it is negotiating, try to come to a resolution.
Another phrase that we hear a lot, have a question about that here, says sometimes we hear on TV the words grand jury. So help us understand, what is that? What's a grand jury?
Sure. Generally, there's two types of juries in the criminal system. There's the grand jury, and then there's what's called a petit jury. Petit jury is what you see on TV. That's when you're in front of a jury of your peers, 12 citizens, and the prosecution and defense is presenting their case. Before they get there, there's what's called a grand jury, and it is a secretive meeting of a panel of citizens. They are the ones that determine the probable cause of a case. It's not at the level it is at trial, which is beyond a reasonable doubt. At a grand jury, and when the evidence is presented, it's just a probable cause. And it's just really the prosecution that presents the case, and you don't even have to have a unanimous decision there. It can be a majority decision of the grand jury if they feel like there's enough evidence to go forward with the case at that point.
We get texts and calls sometimes about my case was no-billed by the grand jury. What does that mean?
That is basically a dismissal of the case at that point. However, it is not a end-all, be-all. The district attorney's office or the federal government can represent that same case to the next grand jury if they feel like it was misrepresented or they did not get the decision they want. So it is not. Doesn't mean it's gone and it will never come back. It could possibly be represented to another grand jury, but that's what it means.
I know that you represent some folks that have been charged with criminal offenses that are considered violent offenses versus nonviolent offenses. In the media over the last 3-4 years, there's been a big deal about jail overcrowding in Alabama and whether or not we should be jailing nonviolent offenders. Where do you come down on that issue? And I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but
No.
I like to ask criminal lawyers that because I do think you know the issue a lot more than guys on the civil side probably know. So where do you fall on that issue?
Sure. Well, jail overcrowding and prison overcrowding is what they really mean. Prison overcrowding is definitely a serious issue in Alabama, but it's a big issue in a lot of states. It's not just Alabama dealing with this. I think I've seen in the news recently that the governor has allocated some money for new prisons in the next couple years, so that may alleviate some of the problems. But prison is generally for more violent offenses, and unfortunately, prison overcrowding is a serious issue in Alabama, but we also, as a state and a country, enforce our laws very well. So unfortunately, there's only so much you can do as far as if a judge sentences someone to prison. In my opinion, there should be a similar to truth in sentencing. That person should go to prison. It's somebody else's job to deal with the overcrowding portion of it. In a large majority of cases, people do not go to prison. So there are a lot of cases where in what I'm trying to say is a lot of people do not get sentenced to prison that could be sentenced to prison, and we still have an overcrowding problem. Yeah. So we've got to address it.
It really is a pretty significant political issue, and it's been an issue that's been in the media a lot. It's at the governor's desk, and I know there's a lot of folks that are promoting more jails to be built, or rather more prisons to be built in Alabama. It's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out over the next decade. When we come back, I want to talk about some little nuances of criminal law. We're going to talk a little bit about DUI and what happens if you get a DUI. What rights do you have when you're there at the roadside? Those types of things I think Josh can answer for us.
All right, we're stepping aside. The final segment of The Attorney is coming right up. Stay with us.
I'm attorney John Spade with the Hollis Wright Law Firm. If you have ever had a personal injury claim, the attorney handling your case has likely told you that a portion of your settlement would have to be used to pay back your health insurance company for the medical bills that they paid relating to your injuries. This is called subrogation. In this week's Legal 411, we are answering the question, what is subrogation and how does it affect your personal injury claim? When you purchase health insurance, you sign a contract with the health insurance company, which provides that in exchange for you paying a monthly premium, the insurance company will pay your medical bills when you're injured. Now, that contract has a paragraph that gives your health insurance company the right to seek repayment for the medical bills they paid if you in turn use those medical bills as the basis to recover from a third party that caused your injury. The idea is that your health insurance company would not have had to pay your medical bills if it weren't for the wrongdoing of the third party. Now, health insurance companies routinely put attorneys on notice of their subrogation claims by outlining exactly which medical payments the health insurance company is claiming a subrogation claim for and for what amounts. Throughout the handling of your case, your attorney should be aware of the amount of subrogation your health insurance company is claiming and whether all the claimed subrogation is related to your underlying personal injury case. That way, if your case resolves, your attorney can then negotiate a reduction of the health insurance company's subrogation claim. Subrogation is one of the many moving parts that can affect your personal injury settlement and what you stand to recover. Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and our promise to you. Thanks for watching The Attorneys on WBTM 13.
Welcome back into The Attorneys. This is our final segment, so if you want to get in touch with those attorneys from Hollis Wright who are standing by live to speak with you, you need to get on the phone because the clock is ticking and time is ticking away. Josh?
All right, so let's talk, Josh, just a little bit about DUI. I know the laws have changed since 2010, 2011, 2012 with some legislative changes, but in general terms, what are someone's rights when they're pulled over from a DUI perspective? And I know you get this question a bunch. You know, do you have the responsibility to blow if you are asked to blow? Do you have to do a field sobriety test? How does that kind of impact the whole criminal process of the DUIs?
Sure. Well, it's kind of a tricky question because it depends on what the definition of have to. I mean, no, the officer is not going to make you do a field sobriety test, not going to make you do a breathalyzer test, but there are consequences if you refuse, potentially. Of course, it's always, in my opinion, best to comply with an officer's commands because things can escalate quickly. However, technically speaking, no, you do not have to do the breathalyzer or the field sobriety test.
It may just impact your license down the road.
Correct.
Fair. All right. Let's talk about this. What's your recommendation generally if an officer comes? We see all these what's reported in the media is generally officers doing it the wrong way. You don't ever really see the officers doing it the right way, right? Correct. So what information do you have to provide to a police officer if you're pulled over, and what are your recommendations related to that? Sure.
Well, as I mentioned, I think it's always best to comply with an officer. He's the one in control in that situation. He's the one carrying a gun. You definitely don't want to make your situation worse. As far as what's legally required, I'm not sure. I know if he asks for proof of insurance, registration, and driver's license, that's generally required. Beyond that, I think it would get a little fuzzy as far as what's legally required of you. But as I stated, it's always best to comply. You might end up getting out of a situation that could have turned worse if you question the officer.
Yeah, I've always found that if you recognize officers, and I guess I was taught this as a kid, but if you recognize officers as an authority figure and you're respectful to them, things actually go your way a lot of times. And so a lot of it is just having that wherewithal intact to be able to be respectful to an officer, answer questions, work your way through whatever the circumstance is, and then if you have a problem, you go talk to a guy like Josh.
Absolutely.
And keep in mind, even that you might be technically legally correct, but you can still get arrested and go to jail and then have to deal with it later.
That's a fair point.
A question we've got here, and Josh, you touched on it earlier. What are the benefits of hiring an attorney rather than having one appointed to you?
Sure. Yeah, I did mention that earlier. Of course, Jefferson County has a public defender's office, a great body, and public defenders do a great work in the state and the federal system as well. But hiring your own attorney can offer many benefits. Number one, like I mentioned, you get to choose who your attorney is. If you get appointed a public defender, you don't get to choose who your attorney is. You might get a great an attorney that you get along well with, you might not. Yeah. But it's just like anything else. In the private sector, you get to feel that person out, get a feel for your relationship with him or her as your attorney, his or her competence level, and feel comfortable building a rapport with that particular person. As I also mentioned, hiring your own attorney, you can get started right away. There's no telling when you'll get appointed an attorney from the judge, whereas if you can go hire your own attorney, you can get started on your legal defense team or legal defense work right away, and probably make yourself feel a lot better about the problem and the situation that you have to deal with.
But regardless, you recommend, I mean, especially for things more than maybe just traffic tickets and violations, getting a lawyer involved quickly.
Oh, definitely. For peace of mind, if nothing else, the fact that you have somebody working on your case, unless you've got some experience or some legal knowledge yourself or been to law school, you're out of your element there. So you would have somebody working on your side, someone that you can communicate with and relay information to, as well as somebody that can look over your case and start giving you a feedback of what the situation is and what you're looking at.
Real quick, we all see texting and driving in the media. Have you seen an increase in the number of prosecutions related to texting and driving, or has that not become a significant issue yet?
I haven't, honestly. A lot of that would be in misdemeanor jurisdictions, municipal court jurisdictions, which I do handle municipal court jurisdictions. I'm one of the defense attorneys for the city of Homewood. There just aren't that many texting and driving tickets that I've seen. Maybe on your side in dealing with car wrecks or something like that, personal injury, there might be more of the texting and driving issue, but as far as criminally related matters, there's not that many tickets I see being issued.
I bet when we sit here in 10 years, the answer to that is totally different, because I think it's coming. I think people are going to start being criminally prosecuted for that, because even in personal injury cases. But we'll see. But it's a fascinating issue.
It absolutely is. Hard to believe, but we're just about out of time. A minute and a half remaining in the show. I want to give both of you, Joshes, the opportunity for a final thought. And if you would, Josh, you go first.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me on, and I appreciate it. Feel free to call me or my firm. The number will be on the screen, 205-970-6009, for any of your criminally related matters. Also handle domestic relations, including divorce, child custody, anything along those lines. Feel free to give me a call, free consultation. We can set up an appointment in my office, even if you just want to talk about your case. But thank you for having me on, guys.
Absolutely, and you do a great job, and it's why we consistently have you on. And let me say this, if for one reason or another you don't remember Josh's number, all you got to do is call the number on the screen each week, and we will get you to Josh. That's really easy, and that's the easiest way to get there, because it's not something that's in the sweet spot of what we do as a firm, but we love to send people to folks like Josh who do a very good job in this community. And we would highly recommend that if you're facing anything criminally related, you get to a lawyer like Josh quickly, and it's super easy to do by simply making a phone call.
Great show.
Great job, man.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks
Great
so
job.
much. Thanks for being with us, and thanks for you being with us as well. Thanks for the time. We'll look for you next time right here on The Attorneys.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.